All right, guys, so before we continue on with our project, I want to set up Git and push our code to GitHub. Now, this video is optional. You can skip it if you want, but Git is something you're going to need to use as a web developer. And what it is it's a version control system, and it allows you to do multiple things. It allows you to back up your code, it allows you to version your code, so you can go back to any point in time and revert back changes if you need to. You can collaborate with other developers, so other developers can clone your code. They can make pull requests and basically contribute to your code repo if you want them to. So it's something that is just needed for both storage, versioning, and collaboration in development. So I would highly recommend learning it. I do have a Git crash course on my Traversy Media YouTube channel if you want to check that out. Now, as far as installing Git, you might already have it on your machine. So just type in Git in your terminal, your command line, and if you see all of these commands here, then you already have it on your system. All right, if you don't, there's a few ways you can install it. If you're on a Mac, you can use Homebrew. If you're on Linux, you can use whatever package manager. If you're on Windows or Mac, you can install it from this git-scm.com. You can download it and install it. And also, if you're on Windows, there's a tool here that you can install called Git Bash, which is basically a custom bash terminal that you can use instead of the Windows command prompt. And that's what I would recommend. That's what I use on Windows, unless, of course, you're using something like the Windows subsystem for Linux. Now, when you use Git, you usually use something like github.com, which is what we're going to use. There's also other services like Bitbucket and GitLab. These are basically just services that will host your repository remotely so that other people can see your code and they can contribute and all that. Now, before you set up GitHub or whatever you're going to use as your remote repository, you need to initialize your project as a Git repository because you'll have a local repository that resides on your machine. So we're going to do that now, and you can use the terminal here if you want to just navigate to your shopping list folder, or what I prefer to do is use the integrated terminal in VS Code, which you can get to by either going to View and then Terminal, or you can toggle it with Control tilde. All right, so I'm just going to make that a little bigger. And the very first thing you want to do is initialize a Git repository. So we're going to say git init. And what that does is it creates a hidden folder called .git. And it's hidden, so you're not going to see it over here. But if we were to do an ls, which will list the contents of the folder, and then -all or -a, which will show all files and folders, even hidden, you'll see a .git folder. So that's our local repository. Now, at this point, we have our HTML and CSS, we have our basic add item function. So that's the code that we want to commit, everything that we have so far. So I'm going to say git add and then a dot, which represents all. Now I can add specific, like if I wanted to do add.stylecss and then index.html. I can add specific files and folders, but I want to add everything. And when you do an add command, that doesn't commit it to the repo just yet. It puts it into what we call a staging area. So I'm just going to run that, and then if I were to do git status, that will show me what's in my staging area. So it says changes to be committed. So I haven't committed it just yet. To actually commit it, we're going to say git commit and then -m, and then in some quotes here, you're just going to put a simple comment that represents what this commit is. So this is our initial commit, so commonly you'll see just initial commit like that. So now it's in the repository. So if I do another git status, you'll see it says nothing to commit, working tree clean, meaning there's nothing in the staging area. So the next step, now that we have it in our local repository, is to push it to a remote repo like GitHub or a service like GitHub. So you're going to want to create an account and just log in. And you can see these are all my repositories. I have 278. So we're going to create a new one. So say new repository. And then we want to name it. We'll say shopping-list. And this will also be in your URL as well. And then description, I'm just going to say vanilla.js shopping list app from my modern JavaScript course, but you can put whatever you want here. Now you can select if you want it to be public, which means anyone can see the repo, or private, where no one can see it unless you allow them to, unless you add them. I'm going to choose private for now, but I'm going to make it public later on. And then here, if you want to initialize it with a README file, you can do that. I'm going to show you how to create a README file from here rather than initializing it here. And then you could also add a .getignore file. What that does is it allows you to specify which files and folders you don't want in the repository. So if you have a file that has like your database password and stuff like that, you wouldn't want that in the repo, in a public repo. So that's what a .getignore file is for. So we're going to click on Create Repository. And now this is the URL to this specific repository. There's nothing in it yet. It's telling us here, if we're starting from absolute scratch, it shows us how to do what we already did, which is initialize and add our code, commit. And now what we need to do is push an existing repository. So before we run this code, I just want to show you, if it's your very first time using Git, and a lot of people skip this in tutorials, but if it's your first time, you're going to want to just run this config command and put your username here, okay, or your name. You can just put your name here, and then you want to put whatever email you used with GitHub, you want to put that here. So just run these two commands. All right, now in order to smoothly communicate with GitHub and not have to log in or do anything like that, I would suggest creating some SSH keys. That will allow you to just quickly push and clone from GitHub. So the way you can do that, it shows you right here, you can run this SSH keygen. You don't even have to put all this stuff. You could just do SSH-keygen. Actually, I'll just do this. I already have my SSH key already set up, but I'll just show you. So if we run that, it says generate public private RSA key pair. Now, if you were to hit the enter key, it's going to create a file, or two files actually, called ID_RSA, and you'll have a public one as well. It'll be like .pub. So you can do that, but I usually like to name the files, to name the key files for what service I'm using. For instance, I have ID_RSA GitHub. So that's what I would recommend doing. And if you want to do that, you have to copy this whole path, whatever yours is. So for me, it would be /users/Brad Traversy, and then it would be /.ssh. And then what I would do is ID_RSA_GitHub. So that's what I would recommend. I already have one called GitHub, so I'll create one called GitHub too. So, and then you can have a passphrase if you want, just kind of like a password, but I'm not going to. So I'll just hit enter again, and now it generated that SSH key. Okay, so if you were to do an ls in your home folder, which you can represent with a /.ssh, and you can see I already have the GitHub, but the one I just created is GitHub 2, and then I have the public one as well. And the public key is what you're going to want to put on GitHub. So let's go ahead and clear this up. And to get that key, there's a bunch of ways you can do it. I think here you can, they shows you how to use pbcopy, but I just use the cat command. Now, if you're on Windows, I don't think you can use the cat command from the regular Windows command prompt, but you can with git bash. That's why I suggest using that. And you can download that from git-scm.com. So from here, we'll say cat and then tilde, which is our home directory, and then .ssh. And then we want the ID_RSA_ GitHub2. And this is important. You want to put the .pub because we're getting the public key. And then that will show up right in your terminal. And you want to copy it. Make sure you copy it correctly right from where it starts with this SSH RSA, and it ends with this right here, this .local. So you want to copy that. And then in GitHub, you can go to your profile, which I'm going to open this in a new tab. Not profile, I'm sorry, settings. And then over here, you'll see this SSH and GPG keys. So you want to click that and say new SSH key, and you can call it whatever you want. I'll just say Mac Pro 2. And then I'm going to go in here and paste in that key. Okay. And then just click this button here, and now our SSH key has been added. So now you can try to push your code to GitHub. So let's clear this up. And you don't have to do this every time. Once you have your SSH keys set up, they're set up, and you can just push your code. But now we're ready to basically run these commands here. So this one will add this repo as our remote repository to push to. So let's paste that in. All right, and then we want to just run this git branch main. So in Git, you have something called branches. In the main branch, or the master branch, is just that. That's your main code, your main branch. But you can create other branches, like if you wanted to create separate functionality, like or added functionality like a login form, you could create a branch called login, work on it, and then when you're ready, when that's done, you can merge it with the main branch. All right, but here we're just working with one single main branch. So we're going to add that code, or that command, and then this is going to be the command for your first push to GitHub. Okay, after this, you'll just be able to do git push, but you just want to specify here this -u origin main. Okay, so it looks like everything went okay, and if I come over here and I reload my repo URL, you can see the code right here. Now, if it says something like public key denied or something like that, I'm just going to show you what to do. So first of all, you want to make sure your SSH agent is running, so you can just say eval, and then just open up a backtick and say SSH-agent, and then close the backtick. And you'll get this agent PID. And then you just want to do SSH-add, and then the location of your private key. So in this case, it would be our home.ssh/ and then ID _ RSA _ GitHub 2. And then it'll just tell you your identity is added. And then you can try to push it again with where is it? This command right here. Now, once you've already done your initial push, then you can just do git push, but you do have to, of course, add your code, whatever you're adding, to the staging area, then commit it, and then push it. So what we'll do is create a README file. So let's say README, and we're going to use Markdown, so it's going to be an MD extension. So here we're going to have just a heading, so I'm going to use a number sign. Now, I'm not going to go over Markdown in depth, but it's a Markdown language to format your text. So this will give us a large heading, and I'm just going to call this, let's say, shopping list. Okay, now I have an extension in VS Code where I can preview, so this Markdown Preview Enhanced extension. So that will actually show me what it will look like. And we can just make this a little smaller. And then I'll probably change this later, but I'll just say simple shopping list app from my modern JS from the beginning course. And I'll probably put a link to that. And I may add some other stuff later, but that's all I'm going to put for now. So I will save this file, close up the preview, close that up. Now, if I were to do a git status, you'll see in red down here is the README file, because that's new, right? That's new from the last commit. So we need to add that to the staging area. So we can say git add, and I could spell out the file or just use a dot, because that just means everything. And then we want to commit it. So git commit -m, we'll say added README. Okay, now if I want to push it to GitHub, all I have to do is simply git push. I don't have to do anything with branches unless I want to. I don't have to use origin and all that, just git push. And now if we come back to the repo, I reload, not only is the README here, but whatever is in that README is going to display right here. Now, how often you want to commit is really up to you. Everyone has different preferences. You could do it after every single piece of functionality that you add, or every few, or whatever. And I'm not going to make any more commits on camera through the course. I'll do it off camera, but that's really up to you. I just wanted to show you how to get everything set up so that you can actually create a repository and push to it whenever you want.